You're listening to the New Dominion podcast, where we engage in curious and faith-filled conversations about stewarding our health and community with others. I'm Kirsten Hansen. I'm a functional nutrition practitioner. Relevant to this episode is the fact that I also have a degree in counseling. And here with my co-hosts and dear friends, Abby Keene, Doctor of Chiropractic Care, and also a functional nutrition practitioner, and her husband, my friend, Taylor Keene, who is a licensed professional counselor here in St. Louis. And today's episode, I believe, is titled, Maybe You Should Talk to Someone.
Is that what it's called? I forgot that we called it that.
It's a good one.
We're going to be talking about counseling and the role that it plays in our health. We're going to cover all of it, all of the facts that counseling, all of the things about counseling, and all of how it affects our health and wellness.
Ready, set,
4 hours later,
go.
we might get there.
Just 4.
Well, it would be more like 4 hours later, I pass out on the floor, probably from dehydration.
From dehydration. I do just want to say, for those who listened to the last episode about water, I made us all Americanos in preparation for this episode. I just feel like coffee and counseling go together
This
well.
is probably why I'm dehydrated a lot, because I drink a lot of coffee while I'm counseling.
You do much better at herbal tea than I do,
So
we just gave away our secret that we are recording
No,
this.
we didn't.
Well,
I didn't say it.
All right,
I
well,
caught myself.
All right. Okay. Well, we'll cut that part out so we don't allude to any fact that there is a secret. Are we talking about the same secret?
Yes, we are. Taylor's confused, but I'm on
I know
page.
what you're talking about, but I'm like, why does it matter?
He's playing it off like a good counselor would.
Tell me more. How does that make you feel?
Taylor, why are you a counselor?
That's the question we're starting with?
I would love to know. I think it would be great for our listeners to know.
I'm here for this.
Yeah. Like, how did you get here? Let's just say Taylor graduated from college from Florida State as a graphic designer. And here we are. How many years later?
A lot.
I'm not doing the math right now.
I graduated. Why you're outing my age on the podcast? Like 98, I graduated.
Did that a couple episodes ago.
1998, I graduated with a, ready for this, a bachelor's of science in fine arts. Go ahead, sit with that for a second.
Ooh, bachelor's of science.
I got the brown tassel instead of the pretty like red or
art.
gold tassel that goes with the fine art program.
I mean, counseling is
Nope, I didn't graduate with that.
And
like there was no counseling. I was not a emotionally aware person in 1998.
Well,
that's true.
Can I tell you, my grandfather was very relieved because my bachelor's degree is in education, early childhood education, human development. And my grandfather was so relieved that my degree was a Bachelor of Science instead of a Bachelor of Arts. So in my grandfather's mind, that is better. I don't know how you accomplished it, but it's better.
The reason why it's a Bachelor's of Science
and
for
not
art, I mean, you think art would be in the arts category, right? But it's a Bachelor's of Science.
Yeah.
Because I used a computer in graphic design. And so they're like, oh, well, you're not really an artist, even though I had to take all fine art classes to get there. Let's see, my counseling journey. I always wanted to be a camp counselor. And so like I've always enjoyed working with kids in some degree, some fashion. So I spent a number of college years working as a summer camp counselor with elementary and middle school up to high school. It's been in fact, in high school camp counseling, I met some of my good friends, my best friends to this day still, which is really cool because, when I'm 19, 20 and I'm counseling a kid who's 17, 18, there's not that much difference in our life, except for they're in high school and I'm not. After that, I tried to work as a graphic designer for many years, but I think I got bored, if I'm honest, of sitting in front of a computer, having people tell me to move things 30 pixels to the left and me telling them that's not aesthetically going to look great. I do it. They say, you're right. So I have to put it back. I enjoy working in teams. I enjoy being around people and I enjoy being part of a bigger picture that's working towards something. And I never felt like that in my design career, really had that. I really never felt like I was actually a part of something bigger and anything that mattered. And so, working kind of found some just bad dead end jobs. And then I had a friend invite me to visit her at New Dominion boys' school to work with wilderness in a wilderness school with teenage delinquents. And I remember having a phone conversation with her. Her name was Janie. And I was like, Janie, you are insane. Like, you're literally sleeping in a tent you've made out of trees and tarps on a cot, feet from kids that don't like you and could murder you. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. And
It was the
yeah,
best
and so I
years of our
went to
life.
visit, and I was blown away at the staff. Not the job itself is hard and difficult and rewarding, all those things, but that wasn't what drew me to the job. You know, it was the staff. It was the camaraderie and the bigger picture of people working towards the same goal in an area that was of interest, which was relationships. And I didn't really know that was an area of interest for me. It was just something I always kept finding myself engaged in. People always, I could be sitting in Taco Bell in high school and people come up to me and start talking to me. And my friends are like, well, do you know that person? I'm like, I've never seen them. And they're telling me all these things. And I'm like, oh, what did I do? Like, is there a sign I'm up above my head? And so there's that. And then we moved to St. Louis and I tried to come back into the design world for a period of time after working at New Dominion with delinquents and living outside. Moving to a metropolitan area after living in the woods essentially is it's about as shocking as you can think it would be. Abby and I really struggled during that time of just kind of conforming to what it looked like to live in a non-rural area or a non-small town in kind of this bigger area, big people and lots of things. So eventually the burnout happened again, and I had started attending Covenant Seminary on a whim almost. I'm like, I'll be an educational ministries degree and it'll help support the church. I can teach. I like the idea of teaching, not as a teacher, but like teaching Bible studies or being a lay support person. Man, you want to talk about realizing that your plans are not God's plans in the first 5 minutes of a class. That was it. That was the one. I'm sitting there with these wonderful professors teaching about critical thinking, and I'm like, huh? And they're like, how do you help people critical think? I'm like, huh? I don't understand. Like, I don't understand educational theory. I'm like, I don't care to read about it. I'm working a full-time job that I'm burning out on, and I'm trying to read about educational theory at night. No, this wasn't happening. But it did get me in the door with one of the professors who helped shape some of the young pastoral MDivs, to where would they be? Like, are they a missional type person? Are they a small church? Are they a church planner? Are they administrative pastor? Are they a more preaching pastor? And we took these personality tests. Abby and I realized on our Myers Briggs that we are an exact opposite of each other on the Myers Briggs, which I don't know if it's good for.
It wasn't just the
No, no,
Myers-Briggs. This professor had
no, it was.
created there was
Can
like there was like 164 different slices of the pie.
Yep.
And we were toe to toe opposite. I don't know
I'm not sure this is good
how
for our marriage,
that
but like, I mean,
happens,
or it's amazing.
but it has sanctified us
Yeah.
in amazing ways.
So I remember him asking, he looked at me, he's like, well, it looks like you'd be really good at a job that involves people. Do you like people? And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's good. And then he's like, well, what about preaching? Do you want to be a preacher? And I'm like, nope. Mm-mm. He's like, you don't like I'm like, yeah, I can teach something. I could give a sermon if you really wanted me to. But the idea of the grind, another grind of preaching weekly, something just so not where I was. And the idea of taking languages, like,
I was going to say, let's be honest about
yeah,
the
well, the
Hebrew
Hebrew
here.
would probably be, I don't know, Hebrew and or Greek. I took one class in that and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was mandated by my mom to take 2 years of Latin in high school. And I
Same.
look back at that, and that professor, he's a teacher. He already had a judgment against me because I wasn't my sister, because she was a really good Latin student apparently, and I didn't care, and I wasn't. Like, I literally remember nothing about that class outside of trying to not fail. So anyway, I don't like languages. I didn't want to do languages. And he's like, well, we have a counseling program. And I looked at him and I was like, what? What kind of counselor are you talking about? He's like, well, like mental health counselor. I'm like, I don't even know. Like, that's a thing. That's a thing at a seminary. That's a thing that you do at a seminary. He's like, well, yeah. I'm like, well, I could do that. And then he's like, well, let's do that. And so like that's kind I mean, this is my life. Like I found myself at a summer camp because a friend invited me to go work at that summer camp. I literally went to high school with her. I saw her one day at college and she's like, hey, you should come work at this camp. I'm like, okay, do 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 do. And I was an RA because I wanted to be in relationship with people and kind of help lead and steward. Dude, like just kind of stumbled into that. Stumbled into New Dominion. Stumbled into New Dominion Part Two. Here we go. And I stumbled into the counseling part because it just seemed appealing. I didn't come to counseling
Yeah.
because many people who are counselors come to counseling because their life was changed by counseling. That's not my
Yeah.
story. I had never even been in an individual session before I started taking classes for counseling. And so people are like, well, you have to go to counseling. I'm like, well, I do. I've done it and it's fine. But I find myself getting more of my processing with, friends and colleagues and just talking about what I'm struggling with. And if I have things I need to go to counseling for, I will. But that's not how I ended up there. And so, yeah, that's how I ended up in counseling. And it's like 13 years later, I'm here, and apparently it's working because people keep coming. And so I guess it's the only measure I have.
Thanks for sharing how you got here. We've never really got to hear Taylor's story on here.
Yeah.
I love it.
There you go.
That's good.
I
That's
like
good.
hearing it.
Now that you're in it, why do you like it? Why have you not burnt out?
I don't know that I haven't burned out at points. Well, not in the dramatic flame out way. I think we all go through seasons of any job of
Mm-hmm.
being worn
Mm-hmm.
down or overly taxed. But I think I've done a really good job or maybe learned. I haven't done it for the whole time, but like I've learned over the last maybe, especially since we started generations counseling back 10 years ago, since we started that, I've learned to kind of really begin to be intentional with balancing my self-care.
Hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
would work, I could work any and every day, and I could probably see 35, 40 clients if I wasn't paying attention. But that's a, that's a full time job for people who have full time hourly jobs. Counseling full time job is more like 25 hours of client work and then, 15 hours of prep or research or notes or whatever we're doing. And so I think really having a set schedule is really helpful for me. I really do
Hmm.
appreciate having full days with a day off in between that we inherited from our like when our kids were small and we just kind of kept that rhythm of which person was going to be home for the day with the kids. And so I think it's really my self-care and what I do on those days of my day off that helped keep me relatively level because I can't do that job if I'm not walking in the room at least within a certain range of being kind of emotionally stable, present, settled,
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Well, I love counseling. I had gone to counseling when we were first dating, just for my eating disorder. And I know that was just really talk therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, I've now learned is its name. But I was surprised when you were going to school how many types of counseling there are. And like, can you just help our listeners figure out like, I mean, obviously, we've talked about this on here. You need to find people in your healthcare team that you click with. And so I think I come to this episode just curious like, how do people find a counselor that is good for them, but also understand that there's different types of counseling to look for?
So, which question to address first? Finding a counselor. Let's just talk about it. Go
Yeah,
ahead,
right.
Christian. What's up?
I wonder if it would be helpful to first say, why would someone even go to counseling? Why would somebody want to find a counselor?
Well, I think you guys can speak to that as well. I guess it doesn't need to be only interviewed on this podcast. I think you guys can speak to
Mm-hmm.
like why would people go to counseling? What would it be helpful to them? I think there's a lot in the idea of well, we have to deal with the stuff in our story that resides in our body.
Yeah.
And people get stuck when I say story, like we're just to talk about my mom and my dad and like family of origin stuff. And I'm like, kind of, but not really. Like I'm not hyper analyzing your relationship with your parents or your family of origin. I'm not, it's just a factor. It's just one factor of many that are playing into, but it's one of the factors that we overlook because if there's a phrase that comes out, like I had a normal childhood, great. What does that mean? Can anybody define normal? Have we found normal? If we found normal, we know that normal is actually broken or dysfunctional. How
Mm.
and what is the dysfunction is the better question. Where is it hiding? How is it disguised? What was it? Like we all had that problem, that moment where we went to spend the night at somebody's house as a kid and we're like, oh, your family is different than my
Yeah.
family. Like your dad's that, or your mom
Mm.
does that, or whereas like at my house, my that's not how it operated. And so it was we take
Yeah.
what is quote unquote normal as what everybody experiences, and that's not what happens. And so there is no normal. And so I think
Yeah.
everybody can benefit from having an unbiased person to listen and help you see things from a different point of view. And and so what did you guys get from your counseling? Well, let me just ask that. Like, what was it that, like, we have some of Kirsten's story with that and historically, but like, if we just talked about the mental health piece, what is it that was helpful for you too when you were in counseling?
You waiting for me to go first?
You can. I can bumble through that question. I could probably find some answers in here.
I still go to counseling. I love counseling. I think I found it incredibly. I think a piece. All right. So my. I'm like, sorry, I'm pausing because I'm thinking about the editing that has to be
Don't worry about
done.
that.
Do you want me to go while you continue to process?
Sure.
Okay. I mean, I entered counseling as a necessity because I was dealing with an eating disorder. When we were working at the boys' school, is when I had the courage to be honest about it. And that was what they were like, well, you need to talk to somebody. That's not our forte as counselors in that program. None of us actually had counseling degrees. We were just there to hang with these kids and live with them and not give up on them. And that, I think, is a form of counseling
Yeah.
that we all need. But to have someone specific about eating disorders, and it was transformational because she just helped me see outside myself.
Hmm.
I was so stuck in my own story of I needed to be a certain size to be worth something. And I vividly remember maybe like 5 visits in, her being like, "What size shoe do you wear?" And I was like, "A 7." And she was like, "Would you cut your toes off to be a 5?" And I was like, "That's dumb." And she was like, "Well, I mean, you're binging and purging to get into a smaller pant size. And I was like, boom, mic drop.
Hmm.
That's what I needed. I just
Hmm.
needed something outside of my little navel gazing, as Taylor calls it. Like it helped pull me and just see it from a different perspective. Why am I doing that?
Yeah.
Right. So that was a kind of short-term counseling situation. We were counseled just by living in such close proximity with other counselors at New Dominion Boys School, which again, transformative in just having basically friends that we're just so enmeshed with. I don't know if enmeshed is right, but just
That's not the
living
right word. Don't
so
use that word.
closely with. Yeah, not enmeshed. But I think that was just so helpful to learn how. I like what you said, Taylor, about there is no normal. Like when we actually look at normal, normal is probably broken or dysfunctional.
Hmm.
And I think that's what I learned the most out of New Dominion Boys School. And then as life has continued to advance, everybody's got issues. We all struggle. We all have insecurities. We all have worries and anxieties. But it's like, what do you do with those? Who do you go to in those
Hmm.
times? And if you don't feel like you have someone in your family or a friend that can help listen to you in that, then counseling is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
There have been seasons when I've gone to counselors since we've been in St. Louis. One with a business partner, that was super helpful. One after we lost our second daughter, after our stillbirth, and we were getting ready to have another kiddo. And I didn't go to counseling after the stillbirth. I actually had a great community of people that helped us process through that. But it was when I was getting ready to have our third child that I was a wreck. Just my body going through all of this again and the fears. And I saw a wonderful counselor who dealt with loss and grief, and her focus was on that. And that was so helpful. And then I did it again with another counselor after Jules was born, and I was just dealing with parenting issues, and it wasn't so much grief, it was just overwhelm, and she was amazing. So I think different seasons can call for different counseling situations, different versions of counseling, maybe a whole nother person. For me, it's been different people at different stages, which wasn't planned. It was just like, it just happened that way.
That's good. Thank you for saying that. It's a lot in
Yeah.
there, and it's really good and helpful, I think, for people to hear. Like even just the idea that you went to counseling for multiple different reasons,
Yeah.
and sought a different counselor
Yeah.
for these multiple different reasons. And I think that's a really interesting piece of
Yeah.
like, well, shouldn't I just have a counselor? Well, you can, but sometimes you outgrow that person or outgrow that relationship. I think we could talk more about that, but like that's all counseling is a relationship, or that's the foundation of it. So what about you, Kirsten?
Yeah. So the first time that I went to counseling, I think I mentioned in that episode that we did in the first season, was when I started experiencing some anxiety and depression in high school. And I think at that point, I needed and wanted needed someone who I could speak freely to. And I would say I probably felt like, actually, hold on, I'm going to back this up. At that point, when I went to counseling in high school, I didn't know I needed to go to counseling. I told my parents that I was struggling, and they said, "We'd love for you to go see this counselor." And I had already told a couple of older women in my life that I was having a hard time. So I actually think initially my experience with counseling wasn't that great. I think I mentioned this in that other episode. Like I saw someone who quickly was like, "You're not depressed. You just need to go do this, this, and this," and was very dismissive. And then I started struggling with some disordered eating. And at that point, I had read these older women in my life had recommended books to me. And I had read The Search for Significance. I can't remember who wrote that, but it's an old one. I was reading books by like Larry Crabb. As a high schooler, I read Reviving Ophelia and as a high schooler. So both of your eyes just got really big.
I don't know what these books are. This is a you and Taylor conversation.
Oh, okay.
I'm just over here like, look at them know these authors. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I was reading big books. So the first time I went to counseling, I was at my parents' recommendation. I was overwhelmed with life, depressed, anxious. I go, it's a bad experience. Then there's a couple of years in there where I am still talking to people in my community and people are recommending books to me. I start reading some counseling-esque books and realize I do want to see a counselor. And so I approached my parents again and said, I want to go see a counselor, but I want to go to somebody different. And found a great counselor who helped me through some disordered eating patterns. And then moved to St. Louis and started the counseling program and moved into a world with lots of counselors, and a lot of stuff started coming up, and I decided I wanted to pursue counseling again. And so I think what has been super helpful for me has been having an objective person to speak into my life, an objective person who can hear things that are going on and where I can go and know that what I'm going to say is confidential. The confidentiality piece has been huge for me. I grew up, my dad is a pastor, and I think I held a lot in because I didn't know who was trustworthy. in our world and in my world, and didn't want to say too much or offend someone or hurt someone. And so I grew up holding a lot in and filtering what I would say to different people and not knowing who I could trust. And so going to see somebody, a professional who was bound by confidentiality, was and has continued to be something that's super helpful, just in giving my brain a space
There we go.
to process life.
Yeah.
See, I think I tell people a lot is that, yes, I'm trained for this, but I think there's a lot of counseling in everyday relationships. There's a lot of, like, if we're
Mm-hmm.
attuning to and we're holding space for, anybody could be doing something counseling like. I'm not special in the fact that I get to see your story from the outside looking in. That's just an outside perspective. Like that's a natural piece that we all bring to a relationship. We all bring that to things. And so I'm not diminishing the work of counselors. I'm saying that there's a simple part of this that is like the most significant part of any relationship based thing, whether it's like a youth group or a small group or community group, even just a Bible study, is showing up, consistency and showing up. And so I think there's a, like, something really kind of stabilizing in just the fact that people come, and I'm not the same, but I'm relatively even keel. I'm not entering the room in a high drama, and I'm not entering the room in high, like, lethargy. That's the word. And I'm just there, and I'm there. I'm showing up, and I'm holding space. And so the big, so
Yeah.
you talk about, like, what would be how do you find a counselor? I'm like, find a person that you can talk to. That is
Yeah.
Yeah.
somebody that you enjoy talking to. Someone who, I'm a pretty sarcastic person. I'm not sarcastically saying things to people in the counseling room, but my sarcastic sense of humor does come out in therapy because I make weird observations. I make weird connections. And people appreciate that. Well, some people appreciate that, not everybody. I'm not for everybody, but, like, I think we have to remember this isn't so serious that we're just sitting there and I'm like stoically writing things down and keeping track of all these things. I'm not assessing you. I'm with you. I think that's the difference. It's like there are counselors who are
Yeah.
assessing, and there are
Yeah.
counselors who are
That's
with.
a great
And
distinction.
so, and both they have a place and they both work and they both are good. But I don't like assessing. I don't like trying to define the edges of something with the DSM and telling you which disorder you might be experiencing in the moment, because it doesn't always help. It can occasionally, but it doesn't always help. So anyway, I think the connection with the counselor is the most important piece. And you got to give yourself space to kind of figure that out too. You might be able to figure, I can roll with this after session one, but you might need 3, 4, 6 sessions. Because I tell people, you don't need to come in and dump all your trauma in session one. In fact, please don't dump all your trauma in session one, because you don't know me. Like, would you walk into a party or some random person's house and tell them your story, like all the hard things that have happened in your life, and then pay them and leave? That's what you're doing. Like, that's
Yeah.
not, don't do that.
Yeah.
So, like, I think it's okay for people to recognize that a relationship takes time to build. Trust takes time to build. It's a foundation on which everything we have. And if after a number of sessions you don't feel trustworthy or trusting of the other person, you don't feel connected to the other person, and you don't feel there's a good rapport, then that's not the counselor for you. Right.
Yeah.
And, like, you can't figure that out with a 5-minute phone call. I think you can figure that out with a couple sessions, which is not easy because, like, then people are like, well, I have to keep spending. I'm like, yeah, I know. But the good news is you find your counselor, you have them for life. Most likely. I mean, there's some situations where that wouldn't work, but, like, typically I've seen people for decades. Like, I have a kid that's
Yeah.
graduating high school that I've seen since he was 5.
Hmm.
Right? I don't see him all the time. He kind of pops in and out, but I've got to see this kid grow up almost parallel to my daughter, which is kind of crazy. But, like, so I think there's just a space of that. And so you also asked about, like, different counseling paradigms or approaches and all these
Can I pause for a second? I think just off of what you were saying, I think an important thing is to like not wait
Yeah,
to
we'll
go
get
to
to that. Yeah, for
counseling.
sure.
I'm just thinking like the space of if you're waiting till it's so bad that you need it like yesterday, there's a lot that you're going to struggle with because if you don't find the right person or if you try to make the shoe fit when it doesn't, that can be detrimental to your healing as well. And so if you have an inkling right now that like maybe I should see a counselor, then
Start
yes,
the
you
search.
should.
Yeah.
Because yeah, find the person so that when something big does happen, you have that there. And like you said, that one, your one teenager, he's not coming all the time. So it's a space of if you just have someone that you can touch base with, and when life gets hard, then maybe you are going once a week. And when life isn't that hard, then you're going once every 6 weeks. And just that space of don't wait till you're like so mad at your spouse that you can't even sleep in the same room, right? Like if you
Yeah.
guys are struggling, I'm saying this because I know how much you say this of just if you're already bitter towards somebody and then you want to go try to heal it, that's going to be really challenging. But if you're in a space where you're in frequent arguments and you're constantly, we always say, just missing each other, right? There's just times in our family dynamics. My daughter and I will say this to each other. We're just not, you're not hearing me, I'm not hearing you. Let's take a breather and step away. If you're in that space, great time to go to couples counseling. So you can figure out how to get on point until you're too far into frustration and bitterness.
Well, I think crisis is always a time to go to something. Like we always feel like we have to. That's the time when you're realizing I have to make something drastic has to shift, or I have to do something drastic differently, and that's a fine time to come to counseling individually and as a marriage. But that's not what counseling looks like because like it's containing that point of trying to get out of the crisis to get to stability where you actually do the work. Crisis isn't where we do change.
Yeah.
Crisis is where we survive so that we get to the other side and realize what we learned about how we got there, what we could do different. And then from there, we start making lifestyle changes, relationship changes, start recognizing patterns in our stuff. And so couples are a whole different beast, in terms of counseling. Like individual counseling coming in as a crisis, let's roll. Couples coming in as a counseling crisis, ooh, that's hard. I mean, because we're talking about me as one person with two, and I don't know them, and they're yelling at each other, or they're really angry, or you can just sense the tension that's just laced in the room, and you're like, oh my gosh, and I can't figure it out because I only have an hour, and they're expecting something to change. Like, so maybe expectations is a good word to talk about here. Expectations of what you're actually going to get out of that session, of a crisis session, is like maybe you get maybe it's a really really good session, but the normal version of that is it's the beginning of a really difficult journey. It's again, we're trying to contain to the place of getting you to the place where things are more normal or more stable, but we can't necessarily do that. And so I think recognizing that regular counseling versus crisis counseling, short-term crisis counseling versus long-term regular counseling is different. And sometimes you have to do the crisis to get to the long term. But like, I think just recognizing there's a lot there. So just let me address, it doesn't really matter to me well, of course it doesn't matter to me which counselor you guys go to, but anybody. I mean, it doesn't matter to me what paradigm that counselor is operating from. I prefer a counselor who's a Christian, if we're going to name something. I'm not going to push against biblical counselors here. I'm just saying a counselor who's a Christian who integrates into the biblical foundation as well as the modern psychotherapy research. That's important because I think there's a lot there that can be helpful for people. But we keep coming out with new counseling trainings or certifications. Like we have EMDR, we have somatic experiencing, we have internal family systems, we have psychodynamic, which is Freud. We have person centered and interpersonal, and we have radical acceptance therapy. Emotionally focused therapy, which is by Kempel's paradigm. But there's also a version of EFT that isn't that. It's a different emotional, like where you're doing tapping. And I can't keep up as a counselor with the number of paradigms that are out there.
Yeah.
And I think it's just kind of showing the great need for people to have a stable relationship. And so One thing I would say for people is pay attention to a person who's going to ask you to work in a certain way. One thing I think about is like the things that I build my box of counseling theory with a client around. I don't have a counseling theory outside of relationship. My counseling theory is like relationship. And then we see where we need to go. The things I have in the my box of tools are your body and somatic awareness, your health journey, where does that fit in? Your family of origin, like what's showing up in the room, what's your community like now? But the things that are kind of the tools that I pull out regularly are challenge, acceptance, holding space, and helping recognize patterns. Those are the tools. Challenge, acceptance, holding space, pattern recognition. Right. And so I don't have that preformed as a box that they climb into because I don't know how big of a box they need. I build the box with them because it's a partnership that they get to voice into what they want to focus on and what they want to work on. And we build it together. And then we travel and we check in. I check in like, is this working? Is this what you need? Is this what you want? And sometimes people are like, yeah, I like coming and talking about the weather. And I'm like, that we're not working. But I like having somebody I can come talk to and keep up with. And I'm like, okay, as long as you know what you're doing, that's fine. But usually once I point out that we're talking about the weather, people stop coming. So like, because that's not actually helpful, right?
You've used the word working a couple times, and Kirsten, you've been kind of quiet over there. And with you going to counseling for quite a while, what does working in counseling look like? Like you don't just show up and they like magically help you regulate your emotions.
I do.
You magically help people regulate
I have an
you're like a
easy button
leprechaun?
and
You're a
we hit the
leprechaun?
button and everything goes fine. No, I'm kidding. I don't do that.
Wish you
I
would do
know,
that in
right?
our
Like
house.
if I had that ability, what have you been doing?
Well, I'm thinking as Taylor is explaining a lot of this, I have been thinking how the best counseling that I have had experience with has been, yes, the I think research has shown that the most important aspect of the counseling season for someone when they're going to counseling is the relationship between the counselor and the person being counseled. That's the most significant portion of, or the significant change agent, maybe, I don't know, that you would say in the counseling experience. But I would say the best counseling that I have received has been with a counselor who is pushing me towards other relationships in my life. It's not it's not just, I saw one counselor who I felt like pulled me away from a lot of the relationships in my life and made in our conversations in my time with her, I started to really distrust a lot of the people in my life and only trust my counselor. And I felt like I could say now, I think that was a part of what she was doing. And that was not helpful. I think so I think, Abby, what was your question?
Working. What's working?
Just what is working?
Working.
What is
Yeah.
working in
So
counseling?
the work that I have done with counselors who are pushing me towards other relationships in my life, because I'm paying my counselor, which is that's valuable. That's something that I want to do. And also, I'm paying them. There are specific boundaries around that relationship, or very big boundaries around that relationship. And I'm seeing them for an hour, maybe two, maybe three a month. And that's not enough. And so they are giving a lot of the work that I'm doing is in conversation with them, yes, during that 1 or 2 hours a month. And also then doing that work that I've done in the counseling room is encouraging me in the work that I'm doing in the rest of my life. And a lot of that for me has been pushing me, spurring me on, encouraging me towards growing in relationship with the people who are in my everyday life. And some of that, a lot of it comes through having conversations then, because that has been the work that I've been doing, having great conversations with and spending time with people in my life. It might be books that I'm reading. It might be applying things to, I think I'm naturally somebody who is, I naturally bend towards like self-improvement.
Mhm.
But I have sought out a lot of wellness on my own, and my counselor has been someone who has encouraged me towards that.
That is so important, what
Nice.
you just said, Kirsten. It's so very important because people come in with wounds in relationships, historical relationships, right? Like family wounds. And I'm a figure that can hold space to help heal the wounds, but I am not going to be your father. I'm not going to be your brother. I'm not going to be your boyfriend. I'm not going to marry you because I have a beautiful wife and I'm staying with her. So I'm off the market counseling people. No one's ever wanted that, but like, it's just those specific boundaries are there. I can't go hang out with you and get a beer. Like, I'm not your friend.
Yeah.
We're friendly. And I do
Yeah.
love a lot of my clients, but I'm not showing up at their doorstep to help them move. Right.
Yeah.
And so, like, there's a limit to the relationship. And I always say, especially in marriage counseling, my job is to get out of the middle of the relationship. I don't want to be here. That's why in times in counseling and couples, especially, I'm like, great, you said this really hard thing to me. They heard you.
Yeah.
And I say, can you say it directly to them? And they go, why? They heard it already. And I'm like, yeah, but your right brain connecting to their right brain as you make eye contact and you say something really hard or vulnerable or emotional, that's healing for your relationship.
Mhm.
I'm not
Yeah.
healing your relationship. You're healing your relationship. And the other thing you said, all the work that is done is mostly outside of the room. The room is a safe place to unpack it. The room is a safe place to kind of gain direction. The room is a safe place to kind of recognize patterns. But you can't change the pattern in the room. You have to change the pattern by living. You have to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You keep running into the same wall and you're like, why do I keep running into this wall? I'm like, well, why don't you not? Like, why don't you try something different? Well, what does different look like? Well, let's explore that. Like, what is it? What would be a different choice for you?
Yeah.
I think it'd be helpful as we kind of come to wrapping, like just addressing like people's questions about validity of talk therapy, which is primarily what I do. What is even the point? I should be able to handle this myself. How does talking even help? Isn't a lot of this already common sense? Which I would say yes. A lot of it is common sense, but just because it's common sense doesn't mean you can see it, right? It might be common sense to me looking at it from the outside looking in, but when we have trouble with our kids, Abby, like we can't see it because it's too close. We can't see around it. We don't have perspective. And then Kirsten come in and it's like, well, have you considered this? And we're like, oh, of course, right? That makes sense. Like, of course, And so I think just that space of I should be able to handle this myself is, well, it's antithetical to the gospel. It's antithetical to how we're created. There's nothing about what God did in and through creation that says he wanted anybody to do anything alone. That's pride.
Yeah.
It's also fear. It could be shame. Shame's goal is to isolate. So why are you feeling that you don't need help? Is it fear of judgment? It's fear of rejection, fear of people leaving. These are things that you're going to have to recognize as you're coming in. Talking won't fix anything. You're right. Talking doesn't fix anything. Talking
do the work.
can feel better because we get it out, right? Like if you say something hard that you've never said ever to anybody in your life, and you finally reveal this secret, and somebody looks at you and goes, man, that's so big. That's so good. Thank you for trusting me with that. Thank you for sharing that. Well, that's going to feel a whole lot better than them saying it and be like, yeah, I've heard that before. And that was the end of the episode. Unfortunately, we hit some pretty major Wi-Fi outage. It was storming here in St. Louis, or at least was really windy that day, and it just kaput. And so the hope was that I would be able to recapture whatever it was I was leaning towards or heading towards with my last comments. And I don't remember specifically. I could summarize simply as saying, counseling is important. Finding a counselor that you trust relationally and that you enjoy being with is important. And finding a good balance of expertise with personality fit is so very, very important. So I hope and pray that this episode was helpful for you. If there was anything that was unclear or any questions that have arisen, please feel free to reach out. You can go to newdominionhealthcenter.com. You'll probably do send an email somewhere in there. You can definitely please leave comments and reviews to rate this podcast so that it can be found by more people. And also please do share it with your loved ones if you found this helpful. And please just keep listening. I really appreciate you guys. And we'll see you next episode. Thank you.